All right, in this video, I'm going to go over doing some planar tracking to replace this screen. So I'm just loading up the shot into RAM here, and we can see the finger touches a lot of the planar surface here that we want to track. So before we start to create a planar tracker object, we need to see kind of how far the finger goes. So we can see it kind of doesn't really obstruct this dot or that dot, but it definitely does obstruct the dot in the upper right hand corner, the one that you can just see here. Also, the little plus sign up here is covered a little bit, but for the most part, we can see that most of the rest of the information is intact for the entire duration of the animation. So sitting on frame 1, my project settings are set. I'm set to open only one property at a time. I'm just going to go ahead here and create a planar tracker by typing tab and then typing the letters PLAN. Choose a planar tracker, and here we go. So on frame 1, it automatically creates a RotoPaint node with a planar tracker layer embedded. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here by pushing the plus sign and then hold Option and click and drag. And I'm going to go ahead and make a shape that represents a flat surface in the shot. So I know that all of this area of the shot is flat, and I know that for the most part it is visible through the entire duration of the shot. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then go up to here, close the shape. So this is the shape that I want to track. So I'm just going to track this forward. It's going to take a little bit of time. So it's going to go through and it's going to calculate what Nuke thinks this flat surface is for the duration of the 92 frames. I've also imported a screen here that I'm going to use, a JPEG that I'm going to use to place in the screen. And one thing that I should point out, when you're dealing with JPEG files or any files that are of a different resolution than the resolution of the actual project, you will need to resize them or reformat them. And you want to make sure that you reformat them using the distort technique. So if I were to click on this and create a reformat node, you want to make sure that you put the settings to distort. That way, if I click and look at this, it's actually going to make force that JPEG file to be 1920 by 1080. And this is going to be important before we do a corner pin from this planar tracker that we just did. So I'm going to go back to frame 1 now that the tracking is done. And to see how this tracker did, I want to display the planar surface by clicking this button here. Sorry, I have to select this. Display the planar surface and allow myself to edit the planar surface. So enable manipulation of the planar surface. So if I zoom in here, I'm just going to zoom right in and hold Option and drag. I want to click and get this point just right. Okay. I'm going to hold Option, pan across here and get I'm watching the line here as I'm dragging this corner. I'm going to have to come back to this corner. We'll zoom out a little bit. I just give myself a little bit more room here for the screen. Go up to this corner and just get this roughly positioned properly. There we go, and go around to this one. And this one I'm going to have to guess a little bit because it's off. That corner is actually off the screen. Something like that. I'm going to have to come back to this one now and make sure that I'm watching this line up here as I'm moving this, and I'm also watching the other line over here while I'm moving this, just to make sure that I'm keeping both of those lines pretty good. And there you go, move this one in here. So there you go, I'm pretty happy with that overall. Just push F to fit this to the screen and push the spacebar to make this full screen. And if I played forward now, I will get to see if this planar surface stays intact. So I'm just going to click here to take off the editing mode. And whoops, I did something wrong here. I'm going to undo that. I click this button here, which set the planar surface to the image size, so I didn't want to do that definitely. I wanted to click that to take off the editing of the planar surface. So there we go. I press Command Z to undo the clicking of that button. So there you go. We have a pretty locked down track of this screen. So what we can do next is I'm going to tap the spacebar. If I go to the tracking tab of this planar tracker, and I have a choice here. So if I wanted to make a corner pin node that is absolutely going to move the four corners of whatever image I apply to these four corners here, this is the node I would create. So if I create that, and then I connect this reformat node to that node, and if I press 1 to view this, and I'm just going to close this node here and push play, you can see I have my app screen tracked properly into position. And if I wanted to have that have some motion blur, I could enable the motion blur settings here to perhaps 1, and then shutter speed would make it have, the higher you go with this number, the more blur you will get. So it's going to slow down my render quite a bit right now, so I'm just going to leave this on 0 till the very last part of this process, just so that I can preview this very quickly. Next, I'm going to add a merge node below this. And as you can see, this corner pin node has a green arrow to it from the roto paint node that we use to planar track the screen. That's because data is transferring from this node to the corner pin node. And if we change anything in the planar track, it will actually transfer to this corner pin node. So I'm just going to push M to make a merge node, and then I'll just merge this over top and press play. So that is step number 1 in the process of completing this shot. Now, if I wanted to, now I need to put the hand over top of the shot, and then I need to rotoscope the finger to go over top of the shot. So if I go back to frame 1 here for a second, and I'm going to go back to my roto planar tracker, this time I'm actually going to export a corner pin relative node. So the corner pin relative node is handy if you want to do some rotoscoping that is assisted by this planar tracker. So this is going to be very convenient if I create another RotoPaint node here, and I go ahead and I view the footage and zoom into the hand here. I want to create a RotoPaint shape that covers the edge of the hand here that is going to be used to place the hand back over the screen. If I do something like this, and then I go to shape and I feather this by, say, 4 pixels. If I attach this to the corner pin relative node and press 1 to view that, if I push play, you can see that that RotoPaint shape is now moving from its relative position. That's what's important about corner pin relative. If I attached it over here, it would be moved to the absolute position of the screen. I want this to maintain its starting relevant position and then move from there. So that's why I'm using corner pin relative. So there you can see that I have a shape now that follows the position of the hand. So if I push tab and create a copy channel node and copy that alpha onto the original footage, and then make a pre-multiply node to pre-multiply that, you can see here, if I go back to frame 1, I have a really accurate shape at the beginning of this for my RotoPaint, and I can merge that hand back over the final shot here. You can see that's a really good result on frame 1. Now, I do know that the perspective of the hand shifts slightly, and near the end of the frame, the mask starts to drift off. Now I can add some keyframes to the RotoPaint node, because right here it's not drifting yet. So I'm going to go back to the RotoPaint node. I'm going to make a keyframe for that shape right here by pushing key plus. I'm going to go forward a little bit to where it starts to drift, say there, I'm going to go grab all these points and just correct the shape slightly. There we go. I'm going to go a little bit more forward, correct the shape a bit more, a little more forward, correct the shape again, and go right to the end at frame 92 and correct the rest of the way. If I just close the RotoPaint node now, you can see that we've now done some rotoscoping that was assisted by the planar tracker by using this corner pin relative node attached to the RotoPaint node. You can see there's still an area where it drifts off right there. You can kind of see there's a problem. I could go back to that RotoPaint node and just look at my keyframes. So you can see there's a keyframe here on 68 and a keyframe on 55. So this would be a good spot to just go in and correct the shape again. Right in the middle of two keyframes is always a good spot to correct. And then I'll just close this again and take a look. You see I've kind of corrected that little shift now. So great, so we've tracked the shot, we've placed the screen onto the screen, and we've done some roto shape painting that was assisted by our planar tracker. And that's it for this video.